Wanderer, The Ultimate Hippie Trail Journey is a great read and a hell of a lot of fun. Check it out. Follow the journey and our route on our website at wandererbook.com. Hi, this is Steve Reifman. Welcome to week 32 of my Stevie Wander. That's the 50-year commemoration, week by week, of my journey across the world. We start out today in Kabul, but if you can see, we've come a long ways to get there across major continents, Europe, Africa, into the Middle East, and now across to Kabul. And this week, we're going to go from Kabul all the way through the Kabul Gorge, then to the Khyber Pass, to the town of Pakistan called Peshawar, which is a lively city, then on overnight by train to Lahore, a wonderful Chinese restaurant, then on to the border where we face crossing the border and a vigorous border guard who finds Stevie carrying illegal rupees. The next week will be India. Let's go on to the particulars of week 32. So we start this week's adventure in Kabul. And Kabul is one of these places where the hippies gather. That's what you find out. You find out that on the hippie trail, which is a vast and extensive route, actually, there are certain places that are destinations, that are hangouts, that are places where the hippies create their own culture and the culture gets brought into by the local culture, which services it, food, music, etc., to make sure they keep these people happy. And you got hotels and things that service the people. So here I am in a big city, Kabul, and it is one of those places, one of those spots on the road where the hippies gather. And it made it a lot of fun and cool for me. Well, I'd like to tell you a little bit about how I was doing at this point in time, being in Kabul the first time. Now, I'm wearing a kafaya around my head with a hoop on it when I want to. I've got my jalaba. My clothes that I brought with me from the States are deteriorating, and I started buying Afghani clothes, flowing pants I had made for me as I sat and waited, and an Afghani shirt, and things of this sort that were more comfortable and fit with this growing heat as the summer was approaching, and also being part of the culture. Although with my hair and my looks and my skin color, I did stand out quite a bit, as did all the hippies, frankly. But for me, I'm coming in kind of becoming a creature of the road, a road warrior, and intrepid, and looking kind of wild and not very clean because I somehow lost my underwear. I hadn't shaved, of course, didn't really have shampoo. Kind of a funky guy, really, as were most of these travelers traveling in that way. Another thing about the road is that it's very difficult. This overland route across some of the most desolate and crazy spaces on Earth is a challenge. It's not easy. Now, I had some fun and I recollect a lot of the stuff that was fun, but the reality is this is not for the weak of heart. And it's not for anybody, especially women. I don't know how these women did it, but if you did it with men, usually they didn't really seem to travel alone. They would kind of hook up with somebody. And of course, it was easy for them because, as I mentioned, the odds were 5-1. You're talking about men to women who were travelers from the West. When they got to Kabul, the odds were still the same way. And we were a wild bunch playing the hippie role. The eating part was a challenge for me from the very beginning because as a kid, I was a very picky eater. I'm still reasonably picky to this day, although I was forced to diversify. And when you start getting hit with these things on the road, especially places like Pakistan and going on to India, and the heat and the different, in terms of the seasonings and spices and things, and just the whole nature of not knowing what in the hell is going on or where it's coming from, was very difficult on me. But I was making my way, and that's why that mango juice was such a big deal. At least it was something I could sustain myself a fuel, because otherwise I was having a hard time. Even rice you couldn't get plain there. I've mentioned that people were now sitting on the ground or on an elevated bed, but they would always put their butts right on the flat surface. And that was the culture of the East, is that way. And you hit it when you got to Iran from Turkey. It wasn't that way in the Arab countries. And now all of a sudden, everybody is seated on carpets, as I mentioned. Another thing they're seated on the ground for is the toilets. Toilets, as we know them, seemed to disappear when I got to Spain. And I never really saw them again. So you kind of stooped over a hole in most instances if you were lucky, because the toileting scene is also part of that lower to the ground attitude that you get away from the chair sitting up high as we do in the European type cultures as the United States has adopted and most of South America. But when you get going east, you are going down for the bathroom, for the floor is where you sit. Kabul is a very strange place. I traded a jacket for two Afghani hats like this one, colorful, woven skull caps that everyone seems to wear either by itself or with a turban wound around it. 11 May 1971, Tuesday, Kabul. The world's still spinning, so am I. Images of my coming destinations come smashing at me. Good blues scream out as French cats upstairs in the hotel wail on harp and soft guitar in the Kabul night air. Leaving Kabul is going to be tough because somehow this wild Afghanistan has become home to me away from home. I've enjoyed it. I've got my two English buddies with me. I'm comfortable, but it's time to leave for sights unknown and places even unheard of. Off we go for the Kabul Gorge and heading towards the Khyber Pass and Pakistan to make our way to India. And frankly, I'm a little bit horrified, but I'm excited. 13 May 1971, Thursday, for 35 cents, we get some great rides through some of the most beautiful country in the back of a painted lorry. That's what the English call those trucks. A truck highly decorated with exotic designs and writing. Then sitting on top of a highly decorated bus with a myriad of local folks, me and my two English buddies. Yes, it was with the people though. The Kabul Gorge was just magnificent. The gorge is the Kabul River going down, down, down towards the Pakistani border. There was a rock slide on the road, and we had to wait for a bulldozer to clear the road, overlooking the fantastic gorge thousands of feet below with the river raging. At the Pakistani border, a Greek guy offers us a ride to Peshawar, the first big town in Pakistan, in a 1956 Chevy cab. I sit shotgun for the Khyber Pass, a brown cut in the mountains, which though historic is not nearly as beautiful as the Afghani side with its tumbling river and greenery. The border is unique though, as we change the travel side of the road from the right to the left side under the English system. The Khyber Pass is loaded with riflemen everywhere. The roadside seemed to be filled with tumbled down old Western looking towns, really hot, with many locals sporting ammunition belts across their shoulders who show us their bullets proudly and in garb that is yet Afghani in style, since they are Pashtuns, one of the ethnic groups who inhabit much of Afghanistan. Of course, there are still no women to be seen. The day was a very beautiful one, high adventure, and a real feeling of moving east into the Orient. We get to Peshawar and my headache leaves me. Dick and I go downtown here in the back of a golf cart type taxi. Very nice. This is a very oriental, exciting, and exotic place. I really dig it at night. The feeling is vibrant and an Indian feel. It has changed. In just over a day in Peshawar, I really see the city. And in just that little short time, I get to know it very well. It's groovy and shockingly oriental. We find a train in Peshawar. I really saw that city. Very groovy and oriental. The Khyber Pass represented quite a boundary in more ways than one. And we find there's a train that will take us to Lahore all night long. Staggering off the train, we find a great Chinese restaurant in Lahore. We already have border permits. Within 2 hours, I will be going through the hassle of another border. But now it's the Indian border. I never really expected to get to this point. Far out. My head has been grooving, yet my physical has sucked a bit. I did find some great stuff called mango juice that all the soda men on the street here have. It's the greatest fruit drink, bottled to last. I just ate a great Chinese meal for 30 cents. A lot of money, but good and healthy. I want you to understand, folks, that money becomes a totally different thing when you get to the East. And when you're trying to make it with 30, 40 bucks in your pocket and you don't know how far to go. So money is a big deal. And at this point, 30 cents for a meal was a fortune. But we're making it on to India anyway. Now the border with India looms ahead, and I am smuggling some rupees, as are my mates, to get a better rate in the black market. In Kabul, it was worth it, we heard. Dick had some hashish also. I put my Indian cash in my wallet, in my bag. I took out some American cash dollars, and this strange Indian border lady grabs my wallet and finds 40 of the rupees, making me feel busted. This type of activity is a known thing, traveling along smuggling the rupees in Kabul for a significant discount. Though caught, the female border guard gives the rupees back to me and says I should have declared them. She did not find the rest of my rupees. I'm carrying them. The whole world turned green and vibrant as we crossed into India, which we'll pick up on next week. Next week is week 33 of our exciting adventure. We start out having several interesting days in Firozpur, then taking a train up into some unknown cities in India, where we see the Sikhs who live in this area called the Punjab. And then we make it up and we make it all the way through to a mountain place where it cools down because India is stifling hot for us. And then we wind up taking an incredible route through the mountains on the tops of trucks, looking down over a raging river for hours and hours before we finally make it to the Vale of Kashmir, the valley which sits up in the middle of the Himalayas, which is a water wonderland. And that's where we're going to wind up next week, 33. Looking forward to having you join us. The Wander is a great read. It uses something we call the active voice. It's a hell of a lot of fun. You feel like you're right there experiencing it with our wanderer. And follow our route of the journey on our website at wandererbook.com. Next morning, we hitch a ride for a few cents apiece in the back of a painted lorry, a truck decorated with exotic, colorful designs. Richard, Roger, and I enjoy a trip through Kabul city proper to a bus depot in the center of town. Goodbye to the fairy tale land in the beautiful big city of Kabul, Afghanistan. The three of us board the bus filled with a myriad of local folks.
We proceed through some of the most beautiful country. We are going through the Kabul Gorge, and the views are magnificent. The gorge is the Kabul River going down, down, down towards the Pakistan border. We are way up in the mountains descending the overlook. There's a rock slide on the road, so we must wait for a bulldozer to finish clearing the way. The road overlooks the raging river 1,000 feet below. Richard and I get off the bus and watch the crew clear the road and take in the wonder of the majestic setting we find ourselves witnessing in Mother Nature.